Good evening, everyone. First of all, I wanted to thank all of you for turning out tonight on a beautiful early summer, late spring night when it's finally not raining, and taking time to engage in learning about our candidates. I'm Elizabeth Engel. I'm president of the Ward 6 Democrats. I'm one of the sponsoring organizations for this evening's event. There are several who will all be recognized in a moment. And so, yes, first of all, I want to point out our candidates, Robert White and Rodney Grant, about which you will hear more in a moment, and from which you will hear more in a moment. And so thank you both for coming and joining us tonight as well for this forum. I wanted to recognize, first of all, the Hill Center, who is our literal host for this evening, and has made this beautiful facility available for us to use for this event. So thank you, Diana. Very much. I also wanted to recognize the other sponsoring organizations. So obviously the Ward 6 Democrats are sponsoring this, but so are the DC Democrats, the DC Young Democrats, and the Ward 2 Democrats. And we have some representatives of two of those organizations over there. Wave, guys. Juania, who is chair, my compatriot in the Ward 2 Dems, and Howard, what position are you with the DC Young Dems? National Committeeman, thank you. Yeah, so Howard is the National Committeeman for the Young Dems. And so I also obviously, of course, want to recognize Capital Community News and Andrew Lightman, who is our moderator for this evening's forum. Those of us in Ward 6 know Capital Community News best for the Hill Rag, but obviously we put some other publications out as well. But yeah, they are our media partner, and again, interested in moderating this evening's forum. Related to that, Audrey and Katerina, can you raise your hands? Okay, so when you came in, you may have noticed note cards out at the front table that Howard had, and Audrey and Katerina have more. All of our questions, and Andrew's going to talk about this, are going to come through the moderator, but that doesn't mean we're not going to take questions from the floor. We will. You just have to write them down. So Audrey and Katerina have cards, they have pens. If you have a question, you are welcome to write it down, get it to one of them. If you didn't get a note card, you need one, just wave your hand and they'll get it to you. And then Chuck Berger is going to be helping with queuing up those questions. And did I forget to recognize anyone? I don't think so. So with that, I will turn it over to Andrew.
Welcome, everybody. How many people have never been to the Hill Center? Raise your hand. I hope all of you will come back. There are wonderful programs here, both for adults and children, and a lot of musical programs, which are my favorite. So please, before you leave, take a look at the programs and come back often. Things are free here. I'm Andrew Lightman. I'm the managing editor of Capital Community News. Our best known newspaper is the Hill Rag, which has been around close to 50 years now, believe it or not. We are still in print. We also have the Eastern River newspaper, which goes out to Ward 7 and 8, and also the Mid-City newspaper, which covers Shaw and the neighborhoods close to Shaw in the middle of the city. I've been in DC since 1993. And a proud resident of Southwest, which also is covered by the Hill Rag, since 2004. So I welcome you all here and hope that you will submit questions. We're going to try to get through as many as possible. I'm going to go through the rules in a minute. I would ask you, please, to not take any time with noise. We really want to hear from the candidates. Many of you come to make a decision, and we want to give you the most amount of time and then the most amount of time to speak so we can get through candidates the questions as rapidly as possible. The other thing is the candidates will be around afterwards, and you can go and shake their hands and say hello. I know that they'll be interested in doing that. Now, I'm going to go over some rules. My least favorite thing. Timekeeper, put up your hand. The timekeeper has a wonderful placard, and it has two sides, 15 seconds and stop. Please pay attention to him. If you don't, he's going to wave it at you. Please, candidates do not interrupt each other, and audience don't interrupt the candidates, either verbally or non-verbally. Pay attention to the timekeeper and me. The moderator I will be the only one asking questions. And then we'll, of course, take questions on cards from the floor. So we're gonna start with a opening statement from each candidates, and then we'll have which will be 2 minutes apiece. We'll also get a closing statement of 2 minutes apiece, and we can take turns going first. So we'll start with you, sir.
All right, 1, 2. Good evening, everyone. How you guys doing? Good evening, everyone. Even if you're not voting for me, good evening, everyone. I know we don't want to start out with bad energy, but I'm Rodney Grant. I'm a Southeast DC native and a DC community leader. I'm a father of 3 beautiful daughters and 2 beautiful granddaughters that call me Papa. I'm also a husband of a retired police officer and Hall of Famer, basketball star. I brag on her all the time. And she knows I love her so much. People always ask me, why should you vote for me? Because I'm already doing the work that a council member should be doing. I'm already the chair of public relations to bring back vocational education to Washington, DC schools, teaming up with Black Women for Justice to make it one of the strongest vocational systems in America. Also started programs like Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Cameras, where we take our young people and take guns out their hands and replace them with cameras. We got some of our students in here tonight. We teach them filmmaking from thought to theater. They write the scripts, they produce the scripts, and they edit the scripts. We produced 3 films already. We also have Beyond Your Block, where we take young people off their block and take them to different places like African American Museum, the White House, the Commanders games. Me and my wife have been implementing into so many different schools right now with this same program. So we want to make sure we further that program into many more schools in Washington, DC. Why should you vote for me? Because I'm reachable, I'm accessible, I'm engaging. Now, people are going to tell you about the jobs that they're doing, but we can see with our own eyes the inequities and inequalities in our city that's going on right now. So we need somebody that can have a great relationship with the council and people inside the council and people inside the mayor's office and our ANCs, and I'm that person that can build relationships to bring us back to a solid city. I'm Rodney Grant, and I'm asking for your vote on June 4th. I'm already in November, I'm sorry. On June 4th. Yes, I'm on June 4th. So early vote starts on the 26th of May, and I need all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Good evening. So first I want to thank all the hosts and sponsors. I also want to thank all of you all for taking the time to come out. This is an incredibly important election, so I appreciate your attention to it. I'm at-large Councilmember Robert White. I'm a 5th generation Washingtonian. I'm the husband to a woman who has no equal, father to 2 little girls who light my life. And I grew up here in a time that was covered with violence, and a family that struggled with things that most families struggled with in the 80s and 90s. Quality schools, violence in our neighborhoods, incarceration. And as I was growing up, I had difficult times early. I lost my mom to breast cancer when I was 8. 3 weeks after that, I was in a near fatal car accident that took me into the hospital for weeks to recover. I fell behind in school. I failed 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and 10th grade. And along the way, most people who should have believed in me counted me out. My sophomore year in high school, my guidance counselor told me I would never go to college. That was a kick in my gut, but I knew that I could do better. Within 4 years of that conversation, I was halfway through college going to study internationally. I graduated with degrees in philosophy and political science, went on to graduate law school in 3 years, passed the bar, and went to Capitol Hill to work for Eleanor Holmes Stewart to give back to this city that I love so much. I've used my experiences and my frustration to take the next steps to make a difference. On the council, I've passed the biggest expansion of early childhood education in the country. I have done a full reform of our public housing authority. I've passed legislation to protect women seeking abortions, as down the street, the Supreme Court rolled back protections to protect not only people in the District of Columbia, but people who would come to the District of Columbia for that protection. We have gotten over $53 million additional dollars for emergency rental assistance to prevent families from sleeping on the streets. We have fought back against efforts by the mayor to take SNAP money, to take that emergency rental assistance money. As a council member, I've taken on hard things, I've done hard things. We have more work to do, and I'm asking for your vote.
So, gentlemen, I would love to have a really good conversation tonight between the two. I think you both love the city. You both care about all of us who are residents. You both have a lot to say. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. We're going to take questions from the audience on cards. If you could limit your answers to a minute, that would be great. So we can get through more questions so people can hear more of what you think. So we're going to start with Mr. Grant. And my question to you is, what is your plan to improve DCPS and particularly traditional middle schools and high schools in the District of Columbia?
Great question. We've already started doing it. We already started implementing programs into the schools, elementaries, middle schools, and high schools. So we feel like if we can implement as many programs that kids like, especially innovative programs, from gaming to coding, things that they like to do. I mean, they're giving gaming scholarships right now to school. We need to be pushing things that they like to do to get them in school so we can get this truancy problem down that we have. Some schools have up to 80% truancy, which is ridiculous. You know, and if we don't put these programs into schools, our kids are not going to want to go to school. So that's one thing. But we got to put vocational education back in the schools. We got to make sure that we give them opportunities to make equity while they're in school. You know, our kids deserve to make money in school, because if we don't give them opportunities like that, they're going to be in trouble. And they're going to get out in these streets and they're going to be doing what they're doing right now. And they're going to be having these guns in their hands, and everybody's going to be saying they're crazy, but they're not. They just want people to believe and love and care about them. We got to do that again here in Washington, D.C.
I hear your passion. Just keep an eye on it.
I saw my thought.
Okay.
I saw the 15 seconds. I can see everything. I'm running for council. I can see the city.
My mother used to say, you see your eyes to the back of the head.
I do.
Council member, it's your turn.
I appreciate the question. Education is the most important thing we do as a city. As a student who was counted out as a child, when I look around our city and see young people, I know that every single one of them have the ability to do the things I've done and more if we give them the opportunity. Opportunity starts with teachers. We need to keep good teachers in our classroom. That starts with retention. I've passed legislation focused on keeping our teachers based on listening to what they need, including reforming the teacher evaluation system that really pushes teachers into the best performing schools and out of the schools that need those talented, passionate teachers the most. But then we need to make sure students want to be in school. That starts with making sure we have out of school time opportunities in music and the arts and sports. What young people are interested in, we need those in the classroom. We also need to pay attention to mental health, which is why I've passed a bill and funded a mental health, the Master's in Social Work program to get more mental health professionals in our schools. I focus on expanding vocational education and creating a citywide network of mentors for young people.
Segueing into another question, we have a truancy problem in DC.
Yep.
How should we address it, and how do you engage parents to help address truant kids? We'll start with the council member.
Here's how you address truancy: urgently and early. Right now, the city gets one report on truancy a year. That's at the end of the year, and that's too late. That's why I have legislation mandating at least monthly reporting school by school, so we can understand which schools are keeping kids in their seats and learn from them. And for the ones that are having a difficult time with that, we get the resources to them. But we also need to make sure we're getting resources to parents and families. A lot of parents are raising kids when the parents didn't want to go to school in the first place either. So understanding early, at the earliest signs of truancy and absenteeism, we need to be meeting with all relevant agencies, with those families, to understand what the gaps are and how we fill them. These are fillable gaps, but we've got to intervene early, and that's what I'm focused on doing.
With truancy, we have to understand it goes deeper than kids not coming to school. Some of our kids are not coming to school because they're going through gang territory. Some of our kids are not going to school because they don't have no food at home. You know, Southeast right now is a food desert. When you're hungry, you don't want to go anywhere. So we got to focus on making sure our kids are getting the proper nutrition also. But when they at school, we got to have the programs for them. I'm gonna continue to say that programming is going to change the way they think. Me and my wife, we take kids off their block. We know how they think. We've been doing this for years. This is not something we just started yesterday. This is years of work with young people. So we have to give them that opportunity to be successful. And if we don't, you know, we're gonna have another 7 to 8 years of kids that's not wanting to come to school.
I'm gonna push you both a little bit harder on this question. You are both engaged parents.
Mhm.
And I imagine neither of your kids are true, none of your kids are true. And if they were, you would know what to do with them. How do you get and engage parents in the truancy discussion? Mr.
Well, when the call comes in, you know, to a parent, me and my wife have a 15-year-old, and when she doesn't go to school, especially when she didn't go to Deal, and she missed a little bit of time at Johnson Middle School, they call the media, right? So if we know that the kid is not there, we have to sometimes send some help out to the home. Why are schools and homes separated, but the kids go to school? We got to get into these homes, find a way to talk to our parents, get them help right now. The parents need help sometimes to get our kids to school. And when we start focusing on bringing our communities back together with love, care, and respect, and, you know, stop caring about people, then we're gonna have a better community. And we're gonna have our kids coming to school, and we're gonna solve some of the problems that the parents and the kids are going through. Some of our kids are bullying the parents. Some of our kids are living with grandparents and they're bullying the grandparents. So we gotta really get inside of these homes and find out what's going on.
My first year on the council, the mother who lives in Ward 8 called me and asked me to come to her home. When I got there, what she explained to me was that she had a son in high school, and she said she did everything she could. Every day she tells him, you have to go to school, you have to go to school. He would leave the house, but he wouldn't go. And she was afraid for his life because of what had happened to many of his friends. Now, as a government, we can't distinguish between parents who are doing their best and young people who aren't listening and parents who are negligent, which is why we have to intervene early. But our intervention has to look like a helping hand. Otherwise, it will be rejected. This is a city with abundant resources, but poor coordination. So we don't just have CFSA that takes kids and the Attorney General that prosecutes young people. We also have agencies that provide food funding, that provide rental assistance, that provide safe passage. We need to understand for families, when we show up at the door and say, we are here to help, they're going to open that door. But when we show up at that door and say, we are here to enforce, that door is going to stay shut, and we're not going to gain that relationship.
So I'll start the next question with Mr. Grant. What do you see as the do you see distinctive roles for traditional DCPS schools and charter schools? And what should they do?
Well, I think a kid should be able to go to a school, whatever school they want to go to. I'm a DCPS student. I graduated from Dunbar Senior High School, go Crimson Tide, and Susan Junior High School. So I come from a DCPS background, but my nieces went to charter. And if you think about it, we just gotta make sure we get this proper funding into our DCPS schools at the same funding that our charters are getting. And I feel like when we shorten our funding on our kids, that's what's happening. It's not about what kid goes to what school. And there's so many arguments in our community, in our city about, well, charter schools are this and DCPS. We want our kids to learn, don't we?
Yes.
We want them to learn. Why are we fighting about what schools they go to? Let's make sure they learn it when they get into schools. That's what I care about. That's what you care about. It doesn't matter who you're voting for. You care that them kids get the education that they deserve. And that's what we should be focusing on. And we know what schools are not educating the best, and we know the schools that are not getting the proper funding.
So in like policy circles, folks talk about DCPS and charter schools. But that's not how people live their lives. When my wife and I went through the lottery for the first time a few years ago, and we got to apply for a dozen different schools, some of them were charter schools and some of them were DCPS schools. We just want the best education for our daughters. And frankly, we care less about which category it falls into. And that's how most parents in this city are. Now, what I want to see more of from charter schools is innovation. We can do so much better than we are doing now with public education. But if everybody is doing the same thing, then we're not learning, we're not getting better. So charters were brought here to push ideas of innovation, see what works, and duplicate that across our city. That's what we have to go back to. But we need to stop dividing charter schools and DCPS schools as if they are not all public schools. They are all public schools, and they all educate our kids about half and half. So we need to make sure we're invested in them, but we need to make sure we are pushing ourselves to one, innovate, and two, learn, so that the end result is the best quality of education for our young people.
I'm gonna follow that question up for a minute. You know, and the majority of parents in Ward 8 don't put their kids in Ward 8 schools. And many parents in Ward 7 send their kids across the river as far as Northwest. So my question to both of you is, how can DCPS better communicate with parents who are the ones who are making the decisions about placing kids? Because if we have a whole bunch of school facilities on the east side of the city that nobody wants to put their kids in, parents won't go there, then we may as well shut it. So we'll start with, and you'll go to you next.
So I would say the issue is not communication with parents. The issue is parents are going to send their kids to school that they believe is strongest for their kids. Right now, we have a system that disincentivizes teachers from staying at struggling schools because the performance of the students will be counted against the teachers. That pushes many teachers into schools that are already performing well. We also budget in a way that hurts struggling schools. As they lose students, they lose funding. And what you have is a downward spiral. If we want more families in Ward 8 to send their kids to Ward 8 schools, then we have to reform how we evaluate teachers and incentivize them to go to the lower performing schools and how we fund those schools. I believe we could have an upward trajectory and people going across town to those schools if we invested in them the way that they would. That's a hill I've been climbing, and that's a hill I'm going to keep climbing.
Well, you got done.
We'll see.
All right, Mr. Grant.
I don't know how to take that. And I don't take it for you much, Robert. I don't know how to take that when you're down on hills. I would say like this. When it comes, I have a 15-year-old. She went to the Johnson Middle School in Southeast. Great school. And I gotta say, when I grew up, I grew up in Ward 7, parents sent their kids to local schools. And in Ward 8, they do too. So I know you're saying that they want to send them uptown, but that's not all the way true. Ward 8, Ward 7, they do send their kids to those local schools. And it is some great schools over there. We just need to make sure we retain some of the great teachers. And we didn't make sure we pay these teachers what they're worth. Because these teachers are coming to the Southeast schools, they're coming to the Northeast schools and certain schools, but we're not retaining these teachers. And they're great teachers. Why are we losing our teachers? We need to be putting the money into the school system, make sure our teachers are there, make sure these young kids are getting the right schooling, and that's what I care about. And when we're doing that and we're putting the right teachers, then we're doing the right thing.
I'm gonna start with you. I'm gonna start with Mr. Grant this time. I report on ANC 60 as well as ANC AF personally. And I saw some heartbreaking I heard some heartbreaking testimony by admin on low-end parents. And it's about something that I think is true throughout the system. Every school should have a nurse.
Yeah.
And many don't. In fact, many of the health facilities at elementary schools are completely empty. And I know that Councilmember Hendrickson has had hearings on this, but it doesn't seem to get solved. You can start, Mr. Grant.
But we know we need nurses in schools. Kids get hurt every day in school, but we also need to make sure we got mental health professionals in our schools who are young people also.
Yeah.
You know, we need nurses, mental health professionals, we need social workers inside of our schools, so our kids can go and talk to the people that they need to talk to. You know, our young people at a certain age between 12 and 17 are very vulnerable. They need people to talk to. And if they don't have people to talk to, they're gonna suffer and they're gonna be left out. So I wanna make sure that not only that we have a mental health professional, but that we have nurses and social workers inside schools.
Look, every school should have a nurse to start. When we send our kids, my daughters are 7 and 5, when we send them to school, we are entrusting their lives and well-being to that school. And I need to know with every confidence of a parent, of a father, that they are going to be safe no matter what happens. That is not the case across our schools right now. But as Red said, it's also mental health. If you listen to young people right now, they are telling us that they need more mental health supports. Because we don't have enough mental health professionals, that's why I created the free Masters in Social Work program at UDC, so we can open up that pipeline, but then build on that as well. I was at a vocational event last week, and the career navigator for a local high school said that his position was cut. Now, he's fine, he's got another job. But the young people from that school who were at that vocational program wouldn't have known about it but for that person. So this comes back to how we budget in schools. There have to be things that are not negotiable, that you can't put on the principal to say, figure it out, when the principal also has to figure out how to have math teachers.
I appreciate that. Let's change the subject away from the schools for a minute. You're in this beautiful, beautiful historic building that was built to help with naval survivors of the Civil War. It was a hospital, actually. And it's been beautifully restored, and you're sitting in one of the largest and oldest historic districts in the United States, the Capitol Hill Historic District. What is your position on the cultural and economic best value of historic districts and and assuming you support them, what steps would you take to ensure their integrity and maximize their economic value to the district?
So,
Why don't we start with that a little bit?
yeah, I can't remember who started last
Yeah,
time.
neither one. All right, just go ahead.
I apologize if I went out of order.
I'll try to remember.
It's all good, it's all good.
So both my grandfathers fought in war, and I want to, as we sit here, thank and recognize the veterans who have done that, so that we have the opportunity to be in a place like this. That's the biggest reason that when we talk about the cultural and economic value, we have to focus more on the cultural and historic aspect than the economic aspect. There are ways where protecting the culture and history of a building, of a neighborhood, will cause you to have less revenue in the future because it limits what you can build, but it also grounds us socially in the history of our city, for the people who fought and died, and how we got to where we are. That's one of the reasons I fight so hard. We focus on arts, but less on the humanities. I've been a staunch supporter of the humanities, who help to fund programs to educate us about the histories of our neighborhoods across the city, so that is not lost in time, because there's so much value in that, even if the value is not direct economic value as we traditionally recognize.
Well, we gotta break down the word culture, everybody in here comes from a different culture. No matter if you live in DC now, just moved here, or you've been here for 5 generations. I say we have to be respectful to culture. A lot of people come to Washington, DC and want to change the culture. And the culture should not be changed, because the culture has a beautiful music of go-go. It has a beautiful culture of Anacostia. It has a beautiful culture of a Navy Yard, and it has a beautiful culture of Capitol Hill. So changing the culture is something I want to make sure we don't do. We can bring our own cultures here, but respect the cultures. You don't go to New Orleans and tell them that they cannot have music in the street. So I just want people to understand, when it comes to culture, we have to respect each other's culture. And we have to love each other again. No matter who you vote for, I keep saying this, we have to love each other again. This city is split down the middle. and we're fighting against each other. And if we ever gonna get the city back together and say we're gonna heal our young people, then we have to come together as residents.
I'm gonna drill down on that question.
Drill.
I live in an area next to the wharf, right? And I have seen large building after large building be developed. In fact, right now, we have two communities go in north of Main Avenue, one of which is driven by Gyro Lynch, which has got 500 units in it. None of it is affordable housing. Yet, we had a small area plan. We spent, as a neighborhood, years putting that together. You guys passed it. Yet, when the zoning commission, when he came to the zoning commission and wanted to put a 500 unit building on the corner of Main and Ninth, it was like that plan didn't even exist. So will you protect the historic fabric of the city and ensure not everything looks like the Navy Yard and New York City, where it's all big buildings? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I want to protect that. I think Mary tried to protect that and not allow buildings to go too high, but now it's getting out of control. And a lot of these buildings don't even have people that live in, the residence is half full. And I know this personally because we lived in one of those buildings. I can tell it's personal for you when it comes to that building. It's personal, and a lot of people are feeling how you feel. Because affordable housing is no affordable housing in Washington, D.C. And people are struggling out here. We have to make sure that we have apartment buildings that service everybody. If you can't afford $4,000 and can only afford $800, they should still be able to live there too. And we gotta, because we have too many homeless individuals right now, and we gotta get our homeless together. So I want to make sure that we protect buildings going up and up and up, where we don't never see the Capitol anymore. We won't see the monument anymore.
Andrew, I appreciate this question. You talk about the small area plan, and what is important for us to recognize is that a plan is not a vision. And without a vision, then we are not directing where the city goes. So my vision for the city harkens back to the house that my grandparents bought in 1963 for $14,000. It's a row home, right? That block today looks structurally the same as it did in 1963, but economically, racially, it is very different. My vision for the city is a city that is diverse. The city is only diverse if there is housing that people can afford. What my grandfather was able to do in the 60s, working 2 jobs with a junior high school education, he was able to provide for his family for decades. What my father was able to do as a single father is something that parents, even 2 parents, can't do now. So we have to be driven by protecting the historic aspect of our city, but also making sure that we are building housing for the people who are here, not just the people that we hope to come here.
So I'll take that question a little farther, which is, I live within 3 blocks of Greenleaf, which is one of the largest public housing complexes in the city and owned by the DC Housing Authority, and now is under threat of being redeveloped. I also have watched the city remove an entire community to make a baseball stadium in the Navy Yard. Those people were promised that they could come back, and they haven't. Yeah. It's 20 years now. There are still 3 parcels there that are empty that the Housing Authority owns. So what can we do? I mean, I feel like the mayor and developers look at the Housing Authority land as an opportunity. And we do these very complicated deals where we give them the land for free, and then they build affordable housing for a certain period of time. And yet at the end of that, people don't come back. Like what happened down at Capitol Policy. Why don't you start, Councilmember?
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought up Greenleaf, and I want to shout out my colleague Charles Allen, who represents that area and has insisted that we build first, which I have supported and will continue to support. That is how you avoid displacing people, by not displacing them in the first place. So now, as chair of the Housing Committee, I make sure we do that. But not only correcting for what we do going forward, but also looking back. So communities that were already being displaced before I got on the council, frankly, before I was even old enough to vote, buildings have been built there. And sometimes I found as chair of the committee that leases and were going to people who shouldn't have them, not the people who were displaced, but people who knew somebody. That's not how the city should work. So you know what I did? I called emergency press conference. I blew the whistle on that nonsense, and we pushed that leadership out. Now we have leadership at the housing authority. I hold them accountable, but they don't run away from accountability. That is progress on displacement, and we're going to continue to make progress there.
I'm gonna say like this, you know, Rob, you're on the housing committee, so you understand what's going on in this city. It's a lot of displaced residents. Greenleaf, my daughter plays basketball over there at the rec. That rec gets shut down, that area gets shut down. Crime is gonna go up way more than you think. Because these young people are being taken care of. People look at them as projects and housing projects. These are not housing projects. Individuals live there that love their families. They love their families first. These are not just people in the projects. So don't treat them like it's a project. I go to Clay Terrace to see Bo Luther. He got a garden over at Clay Terrace, teaching young people how to garden. You shut that down, there's no more garden. Greenleaf, Surgeon Quarters, all of these places they tear down. Buried Farms is next. Where are these people going? And are they ever gonna come back to Washington, D.C. and do anybody care? Or is it just about them? So you can call me what you want, but I'm passionate about the people of Washington, D.C., and I'm passionate about people who live in these areas.
In housing for a minute and talk about criminal justice and crime. Last year in 2023, we had a crime surge. It correlated with a drop in the average number of arrests that MPD officers were making, and also with a huge drop in prosecution. Prosecution, of course, is federal, except for youth, which is obviously Attorney General, and MPD, obviously, we run MPD. Crime is starting to drop as the police become better organized. Our new police chief seems to be doing a very, very good job. But what collapsed in 2023 was deterrence. It does not matter, according to statistics, how long you lock somebody up for if you don't arrest them and you don't charge them. Neither we were doing. So what will you do to ensure there is deterrence? Because the most of the people who suffer from crime are black, not white. And more importantly, how can you do it in a humane way that keeps the police responsible? Mr. Grant.
Well, I think I'm the only one who has a wife that was a police officer, and we sat and we talked a lot about crime. Some we agree on, some we don't, and how to handle it. But one thing we do agree on that we have to have diversion programs for our young people to go with their parents when it's before they get to a certain point. And we gotta have some type of deterrent early so our young people know they love us, love them. 71 shots rang out on Howard Road recently in Northwest Washington. Drive-by shooting at Dunbar Senior High School in the morning when kids are going to school, trying to get an education. That's all they want. 3-year-old gets killed just outside. We gotta have better protection of our young people. We gotta have better protection of our community. And when young people are using these guns, we gotta have a gun court. They gotta go. Guns should not be in our city dominating us like this. And you can just wail around and just get locked up and get out the next day. We have to have some type of repercussions for our young people when they do it and train them when they enter.
Councilmember, you're gonna give the council member an extra things.
we've lost children, multiple children to gun violence in our city. Kids in school with bullets coming through the window. As a native Washingtonian who's comfortable in every neighborhood, every block in this city, I'm smart enough to look over my shoulder when I'm pumping my gas. And that's what people across the city know. A mother that I grew up with told me that her daughter knows by the time they park the car, her 4-year-old daughter has to have the seatbelt off so they can get into the house safely. That is not the type of city we want to live in. Now, too long, there were divisive conversations as if accountability for bad policing was somehow meant you were anti-police. We all want both. We want enough police, and we want police who have a very hard job to do that job. So with respect to police, these are not two sides of these are two sides of the same coin. They're not different things. But I love the way that you asked this question because that's what we keep missing. It is the predictability of consequences that drive down crime. So as MPD started making arrests for violent crimes and prosecutors started prosecuting, we saw less crime. Now, as the mayor was throwing out things about penalties, I'm sitting here with a bill that focuses on fixing a broken 911 system and fixing our crime lab that does not have enough people. So police are not responding when crime is happening and prosecutors can't prosecute because they don't have enough evidence. Those are the fundamental, not sexy issues that we have to fix if we want to see crime continue to go down. But you develop a plan by not focusing on the bright, shiny thing, but by focusing on fixing what's wrong.
So I'll follow up with that, we'll drill down a little bit. The Hill Rad ran a series on juvenile carjackers in the fall. And we did a lot of work that culminated in a forum, actually right here in this room, where we had the US Attorney, the Attorney General, and Charles Allen moderated to talk about these things. We had a foster dad who actually, he and his husband were DC Foster Dad of the Year, and he told a story. He's fostered many kids, and they've taken a lot of kids who can't go anywhere else. So they really take pride in that. And he told a story about how he was cooking one day in his townhouse in Bloomingdale, and here's a commotion, and his kid comes in the back door and to the kitchen and looks around, police officers right after them, nabbed it. Kid had tried to carjack an Uber driver with his friends. And the next day, after the dad had spent all night worrying about how he's gonna get him a lawyer, and working with the public defender, what would happen to his child, gets a call from the public defender, don't worry, the case has been papered. He never got a call from any other person in the city asking how his child was after that point. So here his kid is has been arrested, right? And held overnight, let go because they decided to no paper for whatever reason. And no call, no follow-up. So why don't you start, Councilmember?
What's the question?
How do you ensure that when a child gets in trouble, that their parent gets a call from somebody giving them the resources they need and the help they need to keep their kid on the straight and narrow?
So one of the things you'll notice a thing, I do a lot of work that is deep in the details that really fix the issues, but they just are not very sexy. But I believe you have to have a commitment to solving the problems. So one of the problems that you're describing, we have a number of youth-focused crime programs, but they are not coordinated. One of the things that I'm working on now with my colleagues on the council is to have a coordinator to make sure these resources are making it for families. But here's the other thing, as somebody whose brother took a different path than mine and saw incarceration before he saw better times, one of the things I recognize is that as much as I don't want to see any young person in our city behind bars, if young people believe that there are no consequences, then we are encouraging more young people to make bad decisions. So we need to get the resources to them when they committed a crime. There has to be an understanding that there will be consequences, but we are best served if we have good prevention programs like expanded vocational education that I'm working on, like mentoring for kids across the city that I'm working on, and like addressing truancy at its earliest stages as I'm working on right now.
But I do agree, Robert, that vocational education, I just wish he wouldn't have took so long to get involved with it. Because I think people have been asking you for 7 years about vocational education. And we know if we would have put vocational education in place a while ago, some of our babies will be saved right now, and they would be carjacking right now. When they get in the situation, now we gotta deal with it. I was a young kid, I got locked up, went to 6D, they didn't let me out until my parent came. They released me to my parent. We gotta do that. Somebody has to come get these kids and not just let them back on the street, because that's giving them confidence to say, I don't care, they're not gonna lock me up, and if they do, I'm gonna be right back out tomorrow. And I'm gonna rob again, and I'm gonna steal again, because it's a mental thing, guys. We gotta get our kids mental health services right now. If you've never been to Southeast, go. Talk to these kids. They smart as heck. Let's get involved in their lives, and let's don't just throw them away. Let's love them again.
So I'll start with this question. Kids have been, I grew up in New Jersey with a whole bunch of mobbed up Italian kids, right? One of my friends was actually shot in Boston. This mob, and he used to, they used to ride cars all the time, right? You needed basically a paper, a coat hanger and a screwdriver. You could take the car. But the difference is they didn't have guns. Now with the cars, with the fobs, and kids having guns are the way they take cars. What do we do to eliminate the guns? So, yeah.
Well, we gotta start working with the federal government and the Department of Justice to make sure that these guns are off our street. How did they get there? Where did they come from? We didn't develop guns. We didn't put them in our communities. So now they're in our communities. How do we get them out? Sometimes they offer kids money to give guns back, but they offer them $200. Let's give them as much as they can, and we can get all of these guns off the street. Let's offer more to our young people. But because right now, our young people, I work with them every day. They really do not want to be in those positions. And I talk to them, they'll tell you straight up, I need money, Mr. Grant. I need equity, Mr. Grant. What you gonna do for me? Because I'm starving, my mother's starving, everybody's starving in my family. What we gonna do about that? How are we gonna help them? Can't just throw them away. We gotta get in their lives. But we gotta protect ourselves, protect our community, and we gotta teach them lessons when they do these crimes.
Councilman.
Look, we are better off if we're preventing guns from getting here in the first place. That is where we need to go. So if you look at cities like New York, and when they collect guns, when they find guns at a crime scene or on a person, they track it back to its source. Guns are not, other than ghost guns, which is still a small minority of guns in the city, guns are not manufactured here. I want us to identify what states, if there are particular states, particular gun stores, particular types of gun transactions that are leading to the rise in guns here, so that we can direct our limited resources at the right places. That's how you solve problems. So that is where I'm pushing us right now. That is a solution. I wish gun buyback programs have worked historically. They haven't. We can do them, but they're not going to result in too many of the guns. But we will prevent many of these guns if we start preventing them from coming into the city in the first place. Cities like New York City are using data to do exactly this work, and DC needs to step up and get there.
All right, I'm going to follow up with you on that, and then we'll move to Mr. Grant. The city has embraced violence interruption as a strategy to reduce violence. Do you think it works? And if you do, what are the measures we should use to be evaluating those programs?
Yes, I do think violence intervention works. I think it is an important part of our public safety ecosystem. Violence interrupters have and can build relationships with people that the police can't. So they can get information about what's happening as things are developing, get that work with the police and others in the community to prevent crime from happening in the first place. Now, the question of, can I prove that it works? I can't, and that is a problem. In my public safety bill, what I require is that we develop metrics so we know, one, whether it's working, how well it's working. But there are a lot of groups doing violence intervention across the city. There has to be the case, that some are doing better than others, or some are doing some parts better than others. But if we're not learning from each other, if we're not like looking at the data, comparing notes, then we're not getting better. I believe that as government and programs, we always have to be getting better. So we have to break down these silos. We have to be real about what progress looks like. We have to develop metrics to measure success, and we have to hold ourselves accountable.
It's gonna take boots on the ground. We gotta get our boots on the ground, guys. I'm a violent interrupter already. Me and my wife have programs to stop kids from killing one another. I think we have to embrace violent interrupters, because some of them are doing a great job, but some of them are robbing the city and not doing anything. You know, you got the Rich Kid Foundation over here, they don't get any money from the DC government, but every Wednesday, they feed seniors, homeless, with their own money and Whole Foods, a little bit of Whole Foods. We should be putting money into them. All of these violence interrupters need to be real ones, the real ones that I know need to have money put into them and trust into them, because they can save lives, they are saving lives. Right now, it would probably be more murders if it wasn't more of the violent interrupters that we have right now that's working for free, that are not getting any money from the government.
Okay, I'm gonna go change topics in a minute, and then I'm gonna go put this down. We're gonna go straight to the audience questions. I'm gonna ask the difficult questions. The mayor has posed a budget that imposes an enormous amount of austerity in the city, saying that it's a zero-sum game. Lost our COVID money, and commercial real estate taxes are not generating the same amount of income. What about raising revenues? And if you were, what would you cut in terms of programs? How would you raise money so we can afford to take care of our city? We'll start with the council, because that's on your mind now.
It is on my mind. It's not just about what we cut and what we tax this year. It's about what happens next year, the year after that, and the year after that. The reason we are in this situation is because we keep looking at the budget right in front of us, and not the budget 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. So in this budget, what I've proposed, forget the taxes. There's going to be a slight tax increase this year because there are more expenditures than there are revenues. But what about next year and the year after that? So I'm proposing 3 major reforms. One, financial performance audit of the entire $20 billion government. That will result in at least $100 million in existing money based on work that other states have done. 2, a sunset commission, because programs and agencies that were created 2 decades ago that don't even work on its original purpose have to be sunset so that money can go back into people's pockets and we don't have to raise taxes. 3 is an extension of our council budget office, similar to the congressional budget office, so that we are auditing, so that we are doing financial stress tests, so that we understand as we're passing legislation what the long-term financial impacts are on the city. I don't want to be having a conversation every year about what taxes we raise and what programs will be covered. But I know that right now we can be smarter, more efficient, and more effective with what we have.
Give Mr. Brandon another 30 seconds on his answer.
It's all good. Great question. It's 2 ways we can raise funding in Washington, D.C. We can raise taxes. We know that's not beneficial for our D.C. residents, or we can raise revenue. And that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that we raise revenue through a lot of different ways. One way, I want to make sure we have the DC tax credit for the film board. We want to make sure we bring film back to Washington, D.C. Atlanta makes about $8.3 billion a year in filmmaking, and we make about $7 million. If we open up that market and give tax breaks to our film companies coming to Washington, D.C. and implement film in our cities, which we're already started, we can break down the system and have our young people and our citizens making money right now in that industry. You have grips, gaffers, electricians, everything in filmmaking that they have in regular life. So we need to put money into that right now in Washington, D.C. and turn that downtown into a film mecca. Let's use these buildings. They're down here empty. We're gonna keep them empty. we can gut them out and make film studios out of that. And then put our people to work here in Washington DC. So that's what I want to do. I want to bring revenue from things that I already know. I've already made millions and millions of dollars in filmmaking, and I want to show young people and people in Washington DC that it's a different way out.
So we're gonna start with you on this question from the audience, from one of our youngest people here. What kind of programs do you support for kids with special needs?
Well, I definitely support programs for kids with special needs. They're our most vulnerable young people. I support our kids with autism. I work with autism programs right now, and I want to make sure that we get the proper funding. I talked to a parent the other day, and you can watch my IG. And her specific problem was with Ideal School that was treating her daughter brutally because she had special needs, and they weren't writing a letter to make sure that these kids wouldn't bully her. And when our kids are in school and in special needs program, we got to protect them also in these positions. So I want to make sure we have the proper funding put in place that'll protect our special needs schools and our students.
What kind of programs do I support for kids with special needs? Every single one of them. And as a parent, I cannot imagine looking either of my daughters in the face and saying, babe, I'm sorry, you can't participate in this program because that is not something any parent wants to be saying to their child. When we are looking for the best opportunities, there's not a qualifier, there's not an asterisk. We're looking for the best opportunities, period, regardless of special needs. When I work with a number of parent groups, parents of children with special needs, because it frustrates me to no end that these parents, most of them moms, have to have the full-time job of advocating for their kids in addition to working, in addition to parenting. And so I give them strategic advice on how to move the levers in the city from the outside. It's not trying to move those levers on the inside, but it does come down to funding, making sure that there's the funding and sometimes the extra staff to make sure every single program is accessible to all children.
Now we'll start with the council member. We'll go the other way. What is your vision for public transit in DC? How do you propose to fund WMATA for the long term?
I want public transit to work. When you grow up with a single father who has to be at work, you know how you get to school? On the bus. And if the bus doesn't come, you don't get to school. And that is life, right? There are a lot of us who depend. It's not a luxury. It is a necessity. So it has to work. DC has and will continue to fund its share. Frankly, we fund a little bit more than our share, but that's an issue for a different day. One, I believe that we do need to pull leadership from Metro, because I'm tired of having this emergency conversation every 5 years about, oh, the sky is falling. We don't want too many more riders. We don't want too fewer riders. We want to increase how much it costs. People are moving away from it. So we've got to have the right people in place to reform what's happening at the Metro Board. We need DC, Maryland, and Virginia to pay their shares, but we also need Congress to step up because they were a partner, a lead partner in creating the system, but they kind of jump in and jump out this double dutch thing when it's time to pay up, even though they have more money than all of our jurisdictions.
Well, I grew up on transportation, public transportation, Metro. That's all I knew. Catch a bus B6 down to the X2 to get to Dunbar. And it was a long ride, but it was a safe ride. It feels like right now we're not safe on public transportation. And I want to feel safe when I go see a concert at Capital One. I want to feel safe when I go and see to my office at Anacostia. I don't want to feel like I'm not protected. So first thing, we have to make sure that our residents are protected on public transportation, but we also have to put the funds into public transportation to allow our kids to maybe go to ride for free. A lot of these young kids don't have the finances, and we need to make sure that they can have a pass. We had free bus passes, we had free Metro cards when I was growing up. We got to start giving that back to our young people so they won't be jumping gates, and you won't be looking at them like, oh, why the hell they jumping the gate? Because they don't have no money and they want to get there. It's common sense. I'm a pragmatic Democrat. I think in a common sense way. that's why and that's what we need to do, and that's what I plan to do.
Okay, let's go, this one, we're gonna go back to you. New York is about to, this again, these are all from the audience. New York is about to implement congestion pricing in New York City. DDOT completed a study about doing the same thing here, but never released the result. Should DC use congestion pricing to fund Metro?
I mean, if you're coming to our city, other cities do it, but we always been a fair city. For people to come in, go as you please. But it's traffic like crazy, and I don't think it has anything to do that we have to make people pay to be here. I think we need to be rethinking what we already have. We need to sit down with DDOT and see why the traffic is crazy, because it wasn't always crazy like this. It wasn't always traffic on Minnesota Avenue. It wasn't always traffic on K Street.
Come down to the wharf.
It wasn't always traffic at the wharf. We used to get our crabs and everybody can move in and go right out. So we gotta look at it and rethink what happened. You know, sometimes people wanna come in and fix things, but it's not broken. You know, me and my wife ride bikes all the time. I wanna be in a bike lane, but I want it to be safe. I wanna be able to go around the city in a safe bike lane, not in traffic. So right now we're riding in traffic, and I don't think we need to charge people to come to the city, and if you do that, we're just gonna put tolls there, and that's gonna be more traffic. No, I don't see how it is. So we're gonna put traffic tolls on the top. So
You mentioned the sore spot when you mentioned the wharf. You know, you really used to be able to pull up, get your crabs and go. Now you gotta be able to budget 2 hours for finding parking.
Walk across
I
the
can't. It's a sore subject for me right now. But here's the one: release the study, right? Don't hide from the study. Release the study. But you know, congestion pricing won't just affect people who live outside of the district. It will affect people who live in the district. And when the district gets more and more affordable, people with the least amount of money go what? Further and further away from downtown. So the people who keep our economy going are service workers, that folk who work in the service industry and the tourism industry. That's primarily downtown. So we have to be very careful about that. One, I think it's going to end up being a tax on people who already had the lease, which is one of the reasons a lot of people live further out. The second thing is, I don't know if y'all heard, downtown is not doing so hot right now. So we need to be encouraging people to come because everybody's looking to eat our lunch right now. I do want to see, because the idea of congestion pricing, this issue started long before the pandemic, but our businesses in our downtown are not where they were before the pandemic, and I want to get them back.
Okay, some more from the audience, we're gonna jump around. How do we fix the 911 call center, Councilmember?
Great question. Look, this is not the first broken system we've had in our city. Some years ago, fire and EMS was sued because they kept showing up to the wrong address. Eventually, the wrong person died, somebody with money, they sued the city. And as part of that lawsuit, that settlement, there had to be a reform to fire and EMS. They put together a commission that made specific recommendations on improving performance. That is the exact model I used in my bill to fix the 911 system. So we already have a model that works. We just need to do it. We need a government that wants to implement, that wants to find the problems, and that can execute.
I'm gonna ask a follow-up question on the council. What's the council's role?
What is the council goal? It is to legislate. It is to do oversight. One of the things. Yes, we have to fix the 911 system. Now, remember, in a democracy, I'm one of 13 votes, and so you know we work to get those votes. What has happened because of the way the city has been operating? People have started conflating the job of the council, who is having to micromanage agencies, and the role of the executive. And guess what that represents? A very broken government. Now, I still have to operate in that government, so I got to micromanage agencies, but that is a symptom of a broken government, and we've got to aspire to a better government.
I will agree with that. We do have a broken government. I do think that right now, the relationships that the council has with the executive is terrible. I think that they don't get along, most of them. And we have a council and the mayor and ANC is not speaking to one another. And that's our base of our system, then we have a real broken system. But at the end of the day, we gotta somehow find a way to make it happen, regardless if we like each other or not. And I think that's what I bring to the table. I think that's the type of individual I am. I make sure that I can talk to anybody in this room, no matter if we like each other or not. I think we can come together and come together and agree on something. We have more similarities than differences. So we gotta concentrate on the similarities and stop focusing on our differences. And when we do that, we're gonna have a better system and a better 911 system.
All right, we'll go back to you right now. How do we fix the crime?
The crime lab, we gotta definitely, it's trying to get fixed right now, but it's not fixed. We gotta make sure, because our crime lab, we were sending evidence away for so long. And I think that evidence was getting, you told me, okay. And because that crime lab was broken for so long, now we gotta go back in and find out what evidence was broken and mistakes were made, because it was a lot. A lot of people went to jail because of our crime lab. A lot of innocent people went to jail because of crime lab. I know some people in this room that went to jail because of crime lab. So we gotta make sure that we have oversight on crime lab. And we gotta go back and find out the evidence that locked some people up to let some people, innocent people go.
Here's how you fix the crime lab, and I want to make sure my answer is clear here. There's a leadership problem at the crime lab, and we don't have enough people. Those are the issues. How do you fix the issues? You get the best and brightest in the country, but the best and brightest don't want to go to a sinking ship. So you got to put some floats under that ship. How do you do that? By retaining the strongest employees in that crime lab right now and creating the incentives to attract the other employees who need to come. We don't. So even if our crime lab got full accreditation back, they still don't have enough people. So if you attract the right people, if you retain the right people, if you let go of the right people, you have fixed the crime lab. This is not like a Rubik's Cube. This is really pretty simple leadership solution.
All right, now follow up. We've got we're going to do two more questions and we're going to go to close. We're just running out of time. And you guys have pilots questions. So to summarize, I'm going to summarize one of them. We'll go to Councilmember first. MPD deployment. There's a lot of focus on whether or not we have 4,000 officers, and not a lot of focus about where they are. The mayor now wants to deploy an enormous amount of police in the center city, but I got an issue. Most of the crime's not in the center city. It's set 60 and 70, which are police districts on the east side. They have the least amount of officers and the least experienced officers, because the police opt out of serving them because it's unpleasant and violent. The most experienced officers just opt out. They can serve other places. How do we fix that problem, Councilman?
A couple things. One, I've said it before, I'm gonna say it again. We can be a smarter, more efficient, more effective city. We have to be data driven. You deploy police to where the crime is worse. That's where you gotta start. But you also have to make sure that you are attracting and retaining officers. Guess what? We already know why officers are leaving, because just before Chief Conti left, he surveyed the officers to ask them, what are the key issues causing you to leave? And they mentioned childcare, they mentioned morale issues, they mentioned leadership and promotion issues, they mentioned sex discrimination issues. They gave us a list of the things we need to fix. Now we gotta go fix those things. So if we have enough officers and we use the data to direct where we send the officers, we're gonna see a system that makes more sense.
Sure, you have something to say.
I have something to say about everything. I run for DC Council at large for a whole city. Well, you know, my wife's background is in law enforcement. She's a first responder. When it comes to our young people, we gotta give them opportunities. And when I went to Dunbar Senior High School, we had the cadet program, right? So if you was a high schooler in 12th grade, you were in the cadet program, and that cadet program to this day has officers that came out, and that was in '87. So we have to put these programs back in place so our young people can come right out of the city and deal with law enforcement, because we have kids that want to be a part of law enforcement. And these individuals are from the city and know that area and can communicate with these individuals better than someone that's coming from West Virginia, coming from Missouri. People that know the people. It's about community policing again. I don't know if any of y'all was here when the orange hats was here and we were walking around all together and we were protecting our communities together and we spoke to one another. We gotta bring that back again.
Actually, knew Will Hill very well. It was one of the original orange hats. We're gonna end with the perennial question, RFK. Very much an interest to this neighborhood. What should we do with the property? Number one, if we get it. Should we build a stadium for the Commanders? And if there is a stadium there, should it be publicly funded?
Well, first of all, if a person comes and wants to build a stadium, they should have some money to build a stadium. We already given enough money to these rich billionaires right now. But I do want our stadium in DC. I am a Redskin fan, and I say Redskin because I come from that era where we said Redskin, but I used to saying Commanders now, it don't come out right. But I would like to see RFK back where it was. I would like to see our city back. I would like to see us get some Super Bowls back around here. And I would like to see people see the feeling and understanding we had when we won those Super Bowls and hanging out of trees and having parades. Our city right now, our team is not going to win in Maryland. They're not in Maryland. They're not in Maryland's skins. So we just gotta, whatever we need to do, we gotta negotiate and find a way to get money. So, but we also gotta build something else. We have all these kids riding motorcycles around the city. Let's build a park for them and a dirt bike park over there. So they won't be getting bullied between the cars and all that.
Give Councilmember an extra 15, 30 seconds on that. Go ahead.
RFK land, the thing we need most in this city is housing that everyday people can afford. So should we build a stadium? Well, it depends. Does it fit with the housing that we need? I grew up as a Washington football fan. I would love to see them here, but you know who else I would love to see back in the city? My dad, my aunts, my brother, all the members of my family that have been priced out of the city, all the folks that I see every single day being displaced from the city. Young professionals who want to come here, but if their families can't support their income, they can't even come here in the first place. That's what I want to see in the city. So if a stadium can be built around the priority of housing, and it will not be built with taxpayer money, and third qualification, it is good for the taxpayers of DC, then great. But if it doesn't meet those three qualifications, then it can't come here because it is not our highest need. It is something that we want, but it is not our highest need.
Councilmember, would you like to give your summation? And
Closing?
Yeah, your closing.
I would love to.
And I think we're 2 minutes.
Well, I do want to thank you, Andrew. I want to thank all of our Democratic organizations for hosting this. And mostly I want to thank each of you for taking the time out to come here because this election does matter. I know you all have been paying attention, so you know that even though the crime numbers are going down, it is still the most important thing for most of the people in the city. It is still not where we need to be. You all are looking around, you're seeing a downtown that is not what it was. You're seeing an economy take shift from where it's been historically. You're seeing the operations of government not work the way they should. And so you know what this time means. You know that you need people who can't just point to the problems, but people who can get down and find the solutions. We need people who can get things done. That is what I've done on the council. I've taken on the hard problems. I've found solutions. I've built coalitions, and we have more work to do. So I'm asking for your vote because I have delivered for you before, and I'm going to deliver for you again. I'm going to make sure that we are building the city that I've described, that vision of a city that is diverse, that focuses on our basic needs first, that focuses on our highest priorities, that focuses on making sure that we are delivering results and creating a city that works for each of us, not just some of us, but each of us. So on June 4th or before, because that ballot is in your mailbox, I am asking for your vote because there is too much at stake for us to lose progress that we're making in this city.
tired of young people dying around our city? Aren't y'all tired? Aren't y'all tired of the education system failing our young people? Aren't y'all tired? Aren't y'all tired of people making promises that they can't keep because they just want you to like them? Aren't y'all tired? Because I am. I'm tired. I was at home the other day and I thought about our city and where our city is right now. And if we don't get a hold on it right now, we're gonna be in trouble. I came back home to Washington, D.C. because I care about Washington, D.C. I came back home to Washington, D.C. because I saw the problems and the issues of Washington, D.C. Most people would have had their feet up in a hammock in my position. But I said, nah, God said, go home, sell everything in LA, and I did. I asked your wife to retire, and she did. And we came right back to these streets of Washington, D.C. and we implemented programs, and the programs are working. And we got to continue to put these programs in place. We got to continue to bring back vocational education to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to continue to push that program and that plan. But we got to start loving each other again too, no matter who you like and who you vote for. We got to start looking each other in the eyes as Washingtonians and saying, we are our own city. Because I am DC. You are DC. You are DC. We all are DC. And I'm asking for your vote for change on June 4th and before. And understanding that I will make a difference in Washington, DC, because I believe in Washington, DC. Thank you so much.
First of all, I want to thank all of you in the audience for being such good listeners and asking such good questions. I wish we had gotten to every single one. And then I would ask you one other thing. Newspapers are vanishing. We and the Informer are the two last printed publications that are DC based. My company is Black owned, 50 years, owned by two people who still live in the District of Columbia. I've been working here for the Hill Rad and Capital Community News for 20 years. Support us, pick up our papers. Thank you.